Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns are going to get revenge against Jeremiah Smith and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast and welcome to week one of college football. I am Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to be breaking down all things Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith, Julian Sayin, and a plethora of future NFL stars for the Longhorns and the Buckeyes. I've got Texas winning straight up. That's what I have. I'm going to explain why and a couple of key matchups that I found some hidden information that was a little bit surprising to me that made me think Texas is going to win this game. But it is certainly going to be close. Going to be talking about the point spreads, some of the player props from FanDuel. There's some interesting ones there. And we're also going to talk about the matchups and key guys, like who's going to be blocking Colin Simmons, or is there going to be multiple players for Ohio State trying to keep the Texas edge defender away from Julian Sayin. So let's break it down, starting with the numbers. 2.5-point favorite, Ohio State. Is that about right? Is that about what I expected? Yeah. At home, give or take 3.5 would be the higher end. I think these teams are pretty even in general in terms of raw talent. Which one you want to go with? That's 6 one way, half dozen the other. But 2.5-point favorite. The Buckeyes are at home. It is going to be a Fox noon kickoff if you're going to tune in. I think it is also a game that you're going to see a lot of mistakes. Just keep in mind, this is week one. There's going to be some mental errors. I'm going to get to it in my 10 questions here in about 5 minutes. Special teams. Put that in the back of your mind. Special teams, especially in game one of any season, high school, college, or pro, is very, very important. So again, 2.5-point favorite, Ohio State. But if you look at some of the player props, and for the record, I am not a gambler at all, but I thought some of these were interesting. Carnell Tate for Ohio State, over under 50.5 yards. Jeremiah Smith, obviously elite receiver, 78.5. I can go with that. Max Clare, the tight end, 39.5 for Ohio State. Okay. Ryan Wingo, only 51.5 for Texas. I thought that was a little low. He is a burnt. For those you don't know, he's over 200 pounds and he's a burner. He's a sophomore, should be pretty much ready to roll. Only 41.5 for DeAndre Moore. Jack Hendry's the really good. I mean, he's very talented, clutch third down guy. Saw him play live last year for Cal before he transferred to Texas. Great hands. His number isn't the greatest either in terms of his volume, but I get it. He's more of a possession guy, 38.5. Brandon Inniss, for those of you who don't know him, I had a chance to be around him several times during his recruitment. Brandon is only at 23.5 yards. I think he's a key to the game. I think that is, out of all these stats, and again, I am not a gambler. That's the one I would look at and be like, that's too low. Inniss is a third-year player. He's waited his turn. He was a 5-star recruit out of American Heritage High School in South Florida. 23.5 is his over-under. Quintavian Wisner, 16.5 for Texas. Good running back. Emmett Mosley, the 5th. This is a really risky one. We're just going to go ahead and throw out. We're going to have some injury news throughout the show. He's been banged up for Texas during fall camp. Does he play? If he does, how much? I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole either way. 29.5 is the over-under on yardage for receiving for Emmett Mosley. That's probably pretty interesting if you want to go with that one, because you know something that I don't. Sark was very, very vague, to put it mildly. As for rushing stats, this one was a little bit surprising. Wisner was 75.5. He's a really good running back for Texas. But they have some questions. Their backup offensive tackle is injured. They've got some movement, and they've got the Baker kid, the All-American out of Mater Dei High School in L.A. He was a tremendous high school recruit. Only a true sophomore manning the right tackle spots. But Ohio State lost all 4 of their defensive linemen. Now, they've got several recruits coming up the ranks, one of which was banged up at D tackle, but I think he's going to play in the game. Is Ohio State ready. They didn't really hit the portal. And actually, Canoe, one of the guys from Ohio State, transferred to Texas. It's interesting. I thought Ohio State would spend a little more money in the portal and get at least one big-time defensive lineman. They did not. Texas, on the other hand, got 5 defensive linemen out of the transfer portal. 5. Murad Watson, the really good freshman for Syracuse, comes to play for the Longhorns. Cole Brevard. Now, I know he played at Purdue, and they were just abysmal, but he's 6'6", 350-pound nose guard that's at least serviceable in the middle, and they got a couple other guys too. And then again, they've got Colin Simmons on the edge. So the rushing yardage is pretty interesting. For Peoples, he's the expected running back that I would imagine is going to be the guy that ends up rushing for the most yards. 52.5 yards is all they have him for at Ohio State. Now, he's the expected starter. CJ Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia, he's another South Florida kid out of Gulliver Prep. Saw him in high school. He's a really good player. Maybe he's going to get quite a few yards. They've got him at 40.5. They got Quintravian Wisner at 53.5, and then Arch Manning. Interesting. Arch Manning at 27.5 rushing yards. Remember, in college, sacks count against rushing totals. I would be very, very careful of that. I'll leave the props to the side now. I want to go over the questions I have, and then I'm going to go through the matchups and talk recruiting. Go through a few of these before we get to first break. But which quarterback just makes the fewer mistakes? Arch Manning and Julian Sayin. Sayin's a redshirt freshman, Manning a redshirt sophomore. Both of these young men were 5-star recruits. Both of these young men were expected to climb the ladder quickly. They've done what they're supposed to do. But neither one has played very much. Sayin even less than Arch. Arch obviously was a runner for Texas last year when Quinn Ewers came out of the lineup. Do I think he's going to have a great game? I don't know. But again, I like the over-under total on FanDuel for a few of the players at receiver. I think the Ohio State ones were pretty good other than Inniss. But the one that I was a little surprised, what about Wingo? Like, he's a burner. And I'm going to have some questions about the DBs for Ohio State. That's a little low. So I think it's not just mistakes. Will they be willing to take chances? You got to throw the ball down the field. Driving against Ohio State or driving against Texas, for both of Manning and Sayin, expecting 12 to 15 play drives consistently is not wise. It's not how it works. Not against this level of competition. You need chunk yardage plays. Conservatively, depends on what metric you want to use, either 15 or 20 yards in a given play is a chunk yardage play. Does either team do that consistently throughout the game to change momentum, to change field position, and at least give their field goal kicker a chance, if not punch it in the end zone? Secondarily, fewer mistakes doesn't mean just turnovers. One of the most important things, and there's no way to grade this because we never get the information, protections at the line of scrimmage. How often does Arch or Julian go up to the line and change the protections? That is a very big point in this game because both teams have a lot of talent, and they get, like, just for an example, for Julian Sayin, the best pass rusher arguably in the country is Colin Simmons for Texas. Where he's at, how wide he's lined up, if they've got a tight end to help, all those things. Are they setting the protections right? Because a game can end on a sack fumble like Ohio State did to Texas last year in Quinn Ewers. Which quarterback makes good decisions? And especially down in the red zone, because if you don't, you're leaving points on the board. Arch Manning, just going to throw this out, and I don't know the answer to this. Just want to throw it out. How often does Steve Sarkisian and his staff put him in harm's way, meaning quarterback power, quarterback draw, quarterback counter, bootlegs, naked bootlegs? How often do all those types of plays take place? And just in general, how much do they want him to run in totality, whether it's designed or not? They got to keep him healthy all the way through. Their backup quarterback situation is not very good right now. If they put Arch in harm's way, how does he respond? How well does it work? Because he's a big dude. He's 225 and he's athletic. He's fast. But how much does Arch Manning run? I want you to think about that. And when we come back, is Cedric Baxter ready? This is a question I'm going to break down. It's a player I've known since he was a freshman in high school, an elite recruit that was hurt last year. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who look for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling for your MVP, eyeing a bold shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race, maybe, or perhaps you've got somebody you really think is going to win it. For me, it's Joe Burrow. Maybe for you, it's Saquon Barkley. Whoever it is, FanDuel lets you make your decision. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because FanDuel Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back into the Portal Podcast. Once again, I am Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst. Please hit that like and subscribe and become an everydayer. Now let's go back to the question that I asked right before the break. Is Cedric Baxter ready? Call him CJ. He's a kid out of Orlando, Edgewater, true thumper, true downhill power back, but he's got good feet and makes the first guy miss when he needs, and he's an exceptional receiver out of the backfield. Baxter is not a young man that you're going to take down with arm tackles, but he had a massive knee injury. How does he play? Do they have Wisner ready? What's the situation on combining those two? I don't know, but they're both really good backs. And if they can both play at a high level, I think that can be the difference in the game. And this is one of the hidden parts that I mentioned at the outset. Baxter can be one of the most important players in college football this year, because obviously Texas is very good. But if you have a two-headed monster at running back or more, Jaden Blue, they got plenty of guys at Texas, it becomes more likely that the Horns can get it done. I also think that Texas is going to look to do that because, again, new offensive tackle at right tackle, left tackle turned pro a year early, little iffy. And it's not like Ohio State is losing a lot of talent and not replacing it with a lot of talent too. Kenyatta Jackson and several other guys up front. Ohio State's depth chart, to put it mildly, is very good. And I also want to point out that despite the fact that they did lose four guys on the defensive line, I just want to give an example here for Ohio State's depth chart. Kenyatta Jackson was State Player of the Year in Florida, coming out of high school at Chaminade Madonna, same high school as Jeremiah Smith. He's had to wait 3 years. This is his fourth season to start. That's how much talent they've had in front of him, but he's an elite player. Edric Houston, defensive tackle, elite player out of Buford, Georgia. Caden McDonald, another kid from the Gwinnett County area and Atlanta area, 300-plus pound defensive tackle. And then Caden Curry out of the Indianapolis area was a highly coveted kid too. So they got four new guys. So this battle between Ohio State's defensive front and the Texas offensive line ought to be a blast. I'm really looking forward to that. Do not discredit Ohio State's defensive line just because they lost several guys. They have plenty of talent, I can assure you. Several of those kids I saw live, and I can assure you again that they will be ready to play. But the big key again is Baxter. Wisner is really good. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year. Can Baxter and the rest of the Texas guys keep themselves fresh, rotate, and hit it? If they do, I think that gives them not just an edge, but a massive one, because combined with Arch's legs, who I think he'll run a little bit, should give them an advantage. And in close games, the team that runs the ball better usually does come up with the W. Next question, will Texas bracket Jeremiah Smith? And if they do, how does this impact their run defense? Last year, they did a really good job of slowing down the rush for the Buckeyes. But they had really good interior D linemen, a little more experience than this year. I'm not sure. I mean, they got plenty of talent now, but like Murad Watson, the kid that just transferred in from Syracuse, this is still a step up. No offense to Syracuse. And you're playing Ohio State in the shoe first game. I need to see it. Cole Brevard's a talented player, but Purdue was atrocious last year. Is he ready for that? That's my biggest question about Texas. Peoples, Donaldson, Sayin could run a little bit. They're going to use jet sweeps. They may get the ball to Jeremiah on a sweep himself on maybe a reverse. The run defense for Texas will be tested in a different way. It's not as good a group of running backs for Ohio State this year until otherwise proven, but that is a big question. Do they bracket Jeremiah, or do they put him out there one-on-one? If they put him one-on-one, you got to throw it more. You have to throw it more you're Ohio State. Can you protect if you do that, though? That's the other part. They might be able to go one-on-one with a hedge from the safety and go that route. Next up, number 5, how does Texas just handle the road environment game one? Now, Texas is used to being a team that's hated everywhere they go on the road. It's a big name program, all that. But the Horseshoe is crazy. Even if it's just for part of the first quarter, some of the new guys, some of the transfers, some of the players that are trying to get their legs under them, CJ Baxter in particular, like he can be an emotional guy, really good player, good dude, but is he ready for that? In the first quarter, you need to be consistent from play one through the final whistle. That's just something to watch. Number 6, Davison Igmanasum. He had 16 penalties last year for Ohio State at corner. He probably should have had about 50. He's the most handsy corner I've ever seen in college football. 16 penalties. That's awful. But he's also pretty decent covered. He doesn't get beat deep. He'll grab a guy and knock him to the ground if he has to. Does Texas find a way to get Wingo on him and beat him deep? Maybe. Maybe that'll be the first deep ball he gives up. And then the other guy, Jermaine Matthews, he played some, but he's being inserted in the lineup. And they've lost Jim Knowles. He is now at Penn State, the Ohio State defense coordinator. Of course, Chip Kelly is gone for Ohio State as well. That's the other hidden thing. I'm just going to bring it up. It's not a question. It's a fact. You're losing 2 elite play callers, maybe the 2 best in college football. One's going to the NFL and one went to your arch rival, Penn State. How does Ohio State handle that in conjunction with these kinds of environments where one play can change an entire game? Look out for that. Number 7, it's the same question on both sides of the ball. Texas or Ohio State? With all the moving pieces, if you go research this, you can find it on numerous websites. Texas and Ohio State's offensive lines are both in flux. Not only because they lost players, but like the transfer from Rice, I can't even pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to butcher it, that transferred to Ohio State. He's not going to start. He was expected to be their left tackle. That's a problem. That's a hidden gem right there. I'm like, it's not being talked about enough in the national media. I was surprised because I read about that a week or so ago. Then it's continued. That's a problem. The guard that was Cerebeld, however you pronounce his name, my apologies, is moving to left tackle for Ohio State. Very good player, but he played guard last year. Are we sure he's ready for Colin Simmons consistently? Again, I think he's a really good player. That's a lot to ask. Then they've got another young man they're moving to right tackle that's pretty talented that transferred over from Minnesota. Is he ready for that? That's an edge, again, I think, for Texas. But then on the other side, Texas's left tackle turned pro a year early, edge to Ohio State. And then on top of that, their backup is banged up. And Brandon Baker is the starting right tackle, a sophomore out of Mater Dei, elite recruit. So I think the defensive ends for both teams could have some big plays. When we come back, we're going to talk about special teams being a key. That could be the biggest factor in who wins this game. And a couple of different things about Colin Simmons that I want to ask everybody. What's your take? Please comment down below when we get to it. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or in your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. With Monarch Money, it makes it easy for you and your significant other to view all your finances in one place, making it convenient to help yourselves, your kids, and your grandchildren. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Special teams are a major factor in every football game. But I'm just going to throw it out there right now. If there's any game in any season that a team can lose easier, it's game one because of special teams. And I'm not calling out either team. Just want everybody out there, especially if you're gambling on this game. I'm not a special teams guy that's going to tell you which kicker or punter is going to do better. That's ridiculous. You need to look into that. Hidden yardage in a very close game. Again, FanDuel has this at 2.5. Special teams are massive. The field goal kickers, the punters, all of that, the holders, every little detail like that can change a football game. Which one does better? And to that point, if one of the elite skill guys, like if Jeremiah Smith goes back for a punt, and I have no idea what they're going to do with him, they're going to hide anything they can with Jeremiah, and they should. If he goes back for a punt, check your ego. Do not kick him the ball. Keep the ball out of the hands of the elite players. Make guys that are not the superstars beat you, especially in special teams moments. Do not allow them to have easy access to open field touches. Special teams are big. Now, for the question that I think is most important in this game, and I just touched on it a minute ago, but at what clip, what rate, what percentage will Ohio State chip or double Colin Simmons from the Texas Longhorns? He was a 5-star recruit out of Duncanville. Most people had him as a top 10 recruit in the class of 2024. It was warranted. His film was awesome. He earned it. And Duncanville is arguably the best public school program in the United States of America. They produce guys every year that go to the likes of Texas. They go to the likes of Alabama. Their quarterback, he was National Player of the Year this past season, class of 25. He's from Duncanville. He came into Texas last year and was a dude, had 9 sacks. He's a really good player. Do I think he's going to be somebody that Ohio State consistently handles with one guy? I would lean no. Again, Serveld is really good player at left. I'm not as confident, like looking at the depth chart for Ohio State, what I have, and this could change because it's been in flux. But looking at the depth chart, I mean, Phillip Daniels is a redshirt sophomore, transferred from Minnesota. He's originally, I think he played at Princeton High School in Cincinnati. He was a 3-star recruit, but a kid that was pretty highly coveted. Are those two ready for that? I'm not convinced that they are. And I think that's a big edge. So my question is not only what percentage are you going to chip or double, how does that impact your checkdowns, your running backs, and your tight ends? Because you got a redshirt freshman quarterback if you're Ohio State. I think Julian Sayin is going to be a very good player, may win the Heisman at some point. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. He might even be in the Heisman race at some point this year. But this game against Colin Simmons, I am very worried that Ohio State, even though they got their own pass rusher, Kenyatta Jackson's a guy I think a lot of people are going to know about. He was an elite recruit that I saw in high school. I like Texas a lot because of this matchup. Colin Simmons is probably going to hit your quarterback once or twice every game, no matter what you do. But with the newness of the Ohio State offensive line, they've got 2 choices. Just roll the dice, go 1-on-1, or 2, constantly chip him. I think they're going to, if they have to do that, that gives Texas the advantage to then use their own resources to shade more towards Jeremiah. Make Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss, which are both really good players, beat you more, but you know you want to get the ball to Jeremiah. So I think it's an edge to Texas here because I think at least half the time in obvious passing downs, they're going to have to chip or double Colin Simmons. If I'm wrong and if they win this matchup playing straight up, Ohio State should win the game. It's that important. The most important matchup, I think, in this game is what Simmons does against the redshirt quarterback and both the tackles for the Buckeyes. So we'll see. But to me, that's one of those hidden things. The offensive line, they haven't talked about it publicly enough. It's in a little bit more flux at Ohio State than I thought it would be. And that gives me pause. Defensive line, I don't mind replacements as much. And I think their D-line's being undervalued 100% at Ohio State. They got a ton of talent. I don't care if they started last year. Offensive line is about chemistry and congruence. They're still moving guys a week or so before camp. That gives me pause. Now, one last question here. Can Ohio State run on 1st and 10? This is how you could mitigate Colin Simmons. I think they'll be able to quite a bit. But James Peoples, the running back out of San Antonio, Texas, national recruit, he's getting his chance. He's a sophomore. And then they got the Donaldson kid, like really good player, but he was at West Virginia. 7 times last year, he had 10 or more carries in a game for the Mountaineers. So 2 pretty good running backs, but it's not the same as what they had last year. Travion Henderson, like especially him as a home run hitter. Quinshon was more power guy, but he had good speed too. They don't have that now until it's proven again. Got to see it. How do they pass protect? How do they do those little things is important as well, but mostly, can they run on first down? Take pressure off your quarterback. I don't know. I think that's a great matchup, but Texas has got like 5 guys they brought in as transfers at D tackle, and at linebacker, they are absolutely freaking loaded. So I think it's going to be a little tougher sledding, just kind of looking at it. If I had to guess somebody that you needed to look at for Texas on defense, besides Malik Muhammad, I'll talk about that in a second with Jeremiah Smith before I make my final prediction. The inside linebacker, Anthony Hill, you could argue that is more important than Muhammad. I wouldn't go quite that far, but Hill's going to help set the defense for the Horns. He's an All-American. He'll play in the NFL a long time. And he's going to be tasked with keeping Peoples in the Ohio State run game, which shouldn't be as dynamic as Texas, because Arch will probably run more and more effectively than what Julian Sayin will. If they're not able to average over 4 yards a carry with traditional runs consistently throughout the game, I think Ohio State could be in trouble. Now, I think it'll be somewhere around there because that's a great battle, offensive and defensive lines. The interior for Ohio State's O-line especially, really, really good group. And then Serveld is maybe their best player, but he's moving to tackle. Is that out of just necessity, or is he really ready for that? I think it's debatable. So we'll see how that goes. And for a final point here on the run game, does Ohio State have any, again, I mentioned this earlier, a trick way to get either Inniss, Tate, or Jeremiah Smith, and preferably at least 2 of those, a reverse or maybe a handoff, a special play, maybe somebody like Inniss, who's a really stocky, powerful kid, maybe they go Wildcat. There's different ways you can use your run game to make it happen. Now, before I give my final score prediction and a few other comments in general about all the numbers with this, I want to talk about Malik Muhammad. He's an elite corner in terms of coverage, but he's not a very good tackler. If I'm Ohio State, and I was just looking at the grades for Muhammad, like he had several games last year below 50 per Pro Football Focus. Take it for what it's worth. You can agree or disagree with all the different things that they have. But he was below 50 on tackling multiple times. That's not a good sign. If I'm Ohio State, I'm going to screen them to death because most teams are going to play off because they don't want Jeremiah or Carnell or Brandon to get deep. Totally get it. They should use the screen game a little bit more than they even normally would, unless Texas really comes up and presses them right away. And then you can still just run a lot of different crossing routes and use bunch formations to create havoc. But if they don't tackle well in the secondary, all the stuff I talked about with the run game can kind of go out the window. Because if there's any one team that can mitigate the run game better than Ohio State, I haven't seen it. Because nobody has a wide receiver group quite like them in terms of talent, playing together, experience with Ryan Day's passing. Like, give Ryan Day credit. He's a tremendous passing game coordinator. I think the screen game, though, is how you get Jeremiah, Carnell, and Brandon in the best positions. And they got, trust me, if any of those guys get banged up for wit, they got 2-3 other guys coming in that are really good too. If Ohio State screens well, it takes Muhammad out of his game by beating him a few times. Because, again, not a very good tackler. That's one thing to look at. And then also, like I mentioned it earlier, you could do the same thing if you're Texas. Wingo's over 200 pounds. Jeremiah is about 220. Wingo's about 210 or so. I wouldn't be surprised in conjunction. Like, you gotta test Jermaine Matthews if you're Texas. So the corners for both teams are in for tough days. Going deep is part of it for both. That's obvious. But watch the screen game. Jermaine Matthews is pretty inexperienced guy for the Buckeyes. How much does he play? Does he play a lot? Does somebody else beat him out? These depth charts getting released, I don't believe anything because, like, just as an example, Florida State released their depth chart. 2 guys were on it. There were walk-ons that weren't talked about the entire camp. Everybody's like, what is going on? So we may see something like that on game day where somebody we didn't expect is in the lineup for the Bucks or the Longhorns. It's anything's possible here. But Jermaine Matthews is a guy I would go out in the screen game too. With Arch, It helps your quarterback not get hit, helps move the sticks. I think that it's a pretty easy way to really keep yourself in rhythm and ahead of the chain. So screen game will be big. For me overall, though, some of those hidden points, both the coordinators are new for the Buckeyes, and another hidden one just to throw out at the end, they bring in somebody from Virginia Tech to be the new O-line coach. I don't think that's necessarily his specialty, and maybe that's one of the reasons they're moving a lot of guys around to try to figure this out. That concerns me about Ohio State. I like the fact that Arch is a better runner, per se, than Julian Sayin. I'm not going to pick on Sayin, but I don't think he's going to be running around a lot. He's not a big guy. They don't want him taking hits. That's an edge. And I also think Colin Simmons is a definitive advantage. Now, one of those guys, as I've noted, like Kenyatta Jackson, could be the breakout player for the Buckeyes. But I think overall, Texas has a better way to win without really going out of their game plan. I think Ohio State's going to have to do more to get it done. And that's why I like Texas in this game. I've got Texas winning 27-24. I think it'll be a close game all the way throughout. I think the over-under is just under 50 points, too. I would have it over for what that's worth. But Texas, for me, getting a straight-up win at Ohio State, I think this will be a great game. If they played later in the year, I might have a different opinion. I need to see Ohio State's offensive line and how their coordinators work with the players. But less in flux for Texas is the reason. The continuity is why I've got the Horns beating the Buckeyes. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and share this podcast. Please comment if you have something that I missed, if you disagree with my pick, or if you want to hear another game, whatever it may be, fire away. I'm more than happy to help out. I think there's a lot of different opportunities to discuss with college football and all these games. I'm going to do in a preview every day, if not two. This is a great one, though, because a lot of these kids I covered before, so it was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We will see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.